The early morning sun had just begun to rise over Dubai, casting a soft golden glow across the sprawling airport. Travelers moved briskly through terminals, luggage rolling behind them, announcements echoing in multiple languages. Among the crowd was 14-year-old Ayan Malik, a quiet, thoughtful boy with a fascination for aviation that bordered on obsession. He carried a small backpack, stuffed with notebooks filled with airplane sketches, cockpit diagrams, and flight notes. Today, he was traveling with his uncle, an aircraft maintenance supervisor, and had been promised a short visit to the cockpit once the plane reached cruising altitude. Ayan's excitement was palpable. He had spent years studying aircraft, memorizing cockpit layouts, and logging hundreds of hours on flight simulators. He dreamed of flying, of being in control of a plane soaring above the clouds, but never had he imagined that his moment of destiny would arrive so early, and in so dramatic a way. Flight AQR 781, a twin-engine passenger aircraft carrying 408 passengers, taxied smoothly along the runway. The engines roared to life as it accelerated, lifting gracefully into the air. Inside, passengers settled in, children gawked at the view, families chatted softly, and the cabin crew began their service rounds. Ayan, however, was transfixed by the view outside. The vast blue above, the soft rolling clouds beneath, seemed like a playground waiting for him. About 40 minutes into the flight, a subtle vibration ran through the fuselage. At first, passengers barely noticed, but Ayan, trained to listen for anomalies, immediately sensed something was off. The hum of the engines was uneven, irregular. Then, a violent jolt threw some passengers forward. Alarmed cries rose in the cabin. The intercom buzzed, and the captain's voice came over, strained, trembling, and urgent. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a technical issue. Please remain seated." The message cut off abruptly. The voice trailed off mid-sentence. Ayan's heart skipped a beat. Something was terribly wrong. He noticed the co-pilot slumping in his seat, completely unconscious, while the captain looked pale and shaky, struggling to stay upright. The cabin crew rushed forward, pounding on the cockpit door, trying to communicate, but there was no response. Panic began to ripple through the plane. The aircraft was losing altitude slowly but steadily. Warning lights blinked frantically on the overhead panels. Bags tumbled from overhead bins. Children screamed, parents clutched them tightly. Fear spread silently but powerfully. No one was in control of the plane. Ayan's mind raced. He had trained for emergencies in simulators countless times, memorizing every control and procedure. Now, in real life, he realized the unimaginable truth. Someone had to act, and it would have to be him. "Does anyone know how to fly this plane?" One of the attendants shouted desperately. No one answered. I know how to fly. I've trained on simulators. I can try," Ayan whispered, almost inaudibly, but his voice carried the strange confidence of someone who had already faced danger in his mind countless times. The flight attendants exchanged nervous glances. Could a 14-year-old really fly a commercial aircraft? And yet, with both pilots incapacitated and the plane descending, they had no choice. With trembling hands, Ayan was guided toward the cockpit. The cockpit door was finally opened after a tense sequence using the emergency override. Inside, alarms blared. Red lights flashed on panels filled with hundreds of buttons, levers, and digital readouts. The co-pilot slumped over the controls. The captain, barely conscious, muttered a few instructions about altitude and autopilot. That was all Ayan needed. He slid into the captain's seat, his small hands gripping the yoke. Every lever, dial, and screen seemed overwhelming. The weight of the plane, and of 408 lives, rested squarely on his shoulders. A deep breath, a shaky exhale. This was no longer a simulation. "Ground control, this is Ayan Malik," he said, voice trembling but clear. "Both pilots are unconscious. I need instructions." The voice on the other end was calm, professional, yet urgent. "Ayan, stay calm. We will guide you step by step. First, engage autopilot to stabilize your altitude. You are not alone." Every movement had to be precise. Every small adjustment mattered. Ayan reached for the autopilot switches, recalling the simulator lessons he had memorized. Slowly, carefully, the plane leveled. The alarms quieted slightly. The first step had been accomplished. "Excellent," ground control said. "Now monitor your heading. We have cleared airspace for you. Proceed toward Karachi." Maintain altitude and follow our instructions exactly. Aeon's stomach churned, but he forced focus. Each control input required perfect precision. A slight error could cost hundreds of lives. He adjusted throttle, monitored airspeed, toggled flaps, and kept wings level. Turbulence rocked the aircraft. The plane jerked violently. Lights flickered. Alarms blared. Passengers screamed. He gritted his teeth, repeating instructions in his mind. Small, deliberate movements. Do not panic. The plane responded. Slowly, the violent shaking subsided. Meanwhile, in the cabin, fear and hope mingled. Passengers whispered prayers, held hands, comforted children, and exchanged worried glances. Strangers clung together, united by fear and the fragile hope that the young boy at the controls could save them. Karachi Airport had been alerted. Fire trucks, ambulances, and emergency personnel lined the runway. The final approach had to be precise. The controller guided Aeon. Lower landing gear, deploy full flaps, align with runway, maintain speed. You can do this. Aeon followed each instruction meticulously. The runway lights glimmered through the clouds. The plane descended steadily. He reduced throttle, flared at the correct altitude, and felt the aircraft's nose lift slightly as the wheels touched the tarmac. The plane bounced once, twice, then stabilized. Reverse thrust engaged. Brakes pressed. Slowly, the massive aircraft ground to a halt. The cabin erupted. Cries, prayers, and cheers filled the air. Mothers hugged children, strangers wept together, and the elderly whispered thanks. Aeon slumped back in the captain's seat, trembling. He had done it. A 14-year-old had landed a commercial aircraft and saved 408 lives. Paramedics attended to the pilots, who were stabilized and transported to the hospital. Doctors later confirmed that without Aeon's calm and precise actions, the outcome could have been catastrophic. Airlines, aviation authorities, and media outlets hailed him as a hero. His story spread across the globe. A boy, a miracle in the skies, a teenager who faced death and chose courage. Years later, Aeon would fulfill his lifelong dream, becoming a professional pilot. Yet, he remained humble. I just did what I had to do, he would say. When lives are at stake, fear doesn't matter. Only action matters. The world would forever remember the day a boy proved that courage, focus, and determination could surpass age and experience. The day Aeon Malik saved 408 lives. The moment Aeon Malik's hands gripped the yoke of Flight AQR 781, the world seemed to narrow to the cockpit and the endless expanse of sky outside. Every red alarm light, every fluctuating instrument, every minor warning tone now demanded his attention. The plane carried 408 souls, unaware that their survival now rested in the hands of a 14-year-old boy with extraordinary calm under unimaginable pressure. Inside the cockpit, the hum of machinery was almost deafening. The once bright screens blinked erratically, warning of minor engine inconsistencies and fluctuating altitude. Aeon's training on simulators had never fully prepared him for this. Here, the stakes were real. No reset button, no pause, no retries, every decision had immediate consequences. Ground control maintained a calm presence over the radio, providing detailed step-by-step instructions. Aeon, you've stabilized the plane. Now maintain your heading. Adjust throttle incrementally. Monitor airspeed and engine performance. Aeon nodded, barely audible, and adjusted the throttle. The plane hummed as it responded to his delicate input. He scanned the instruments, altitude, speed, fuel reserves, wind currents. Each reading was a tiny piece of the puzzle he had to solve instantly. The cabin behind him was tense. Passengers whispered prayers. Children clutched their parents' hands. Flight attendants kept a careful balance of calm and reassurance. Though they could not see Aeon, they sensed the fragile thread on which their lives now hung. Hours seemed like minutes. Aeon focused entirely on maintaining stability. Turbulence rattled the plane. Lightning flashed faintly in distant clouds, casting eerie shadows on the cockpit walls. His small hands moved decisively, manipulating flaps, throttle, and rudder. Each adjustment required precision. Overcorrecting could be catastrophic. Good job, Aeon, ground control said. You're handling this remarkably well. Now prepare for the next phase, descent. We will guide you to Karachi for landing. Watch wind speeds and adjust approach accordingly. The words settled on Aeon like both encouragement and pressure. Descending a commercial airliner was difficult even for trained pilots. For him, it was nearly unimaginable. Yet fear did not dominate his mind. Instead, focus, calculation, and intuition guided him. He studied the radar and weather patterns. Karachi Airport lay hundreds of miles ahead, the only safe haven. He adjusted speed and altitude, carefully monitoring the engines. The plane's descent had to be slow enough to avoid stress on the fuselage yet fast enough to reach the runway before fuel depletion or unpredictable weather interfered. The passengers, sensing something different, began to notice subtle stability. The once jarring turbulence seemed to ease slightly. Murmurs of hope spread through the cabin. Flight attendants encouraged quiet reassurance. Everyone understood that a miracle was unfolding above the clouds. Ground control continued precise instructions. Lower landing gear. Stage 1 flaps. Prepare for final approach. Maintain centerline alignment with the runway. Adjust throttle as necessary. Aeon's fingers danced across levers and switches, his mind calculating angles, speeds, wind, and altitude adjustments simultaneously. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his heart raced, but his movements were steady, controlled. The autopilot assisted with minor corrections, but the bulk of decision-making was his. The plane passed over distant mountains, valleys, and cities that seemed unaware of the drama unfolding above them. Clouds parted in soft shafts of sunlight, illuminating Aeon's determined face. He whispered to himself, "I can do this. I must do this." Turbulence increased as the aircraft neared Karachi. Gusts of wind rocked the fuselage violently. Alarms flared again. Passengers screamed, clutching loved ones. Aeon adjusted the rudder and flaps simultaneously, correcting the tilt and stabilizing the descent. Every second counted. Every micro-adjustment mattered. Ground control's voice cut through the chaos, "Maintain focus. We are guiding you. Deploy flaps fully at 20 miles out. Begin lowering landing gear now. Keep wings level. Watch speed carefully." Aeon obeyed with meticulous care. The landing gear extended with a resonant metallic click. Flaps fully deployed, shifting the aerodynamics. The plane responded as intended, but every jolt and shudder reminded him of the enormity of his task. Below, emergency crews prepared the runway. Fire trucks, ambulances, rescue personnel lined the tarmac, lights flashing in synchronized patterns. They had been alerted hours ago, ready for the miraculous, yet terrifying, arrival. Aeon guided the plane with precision, calculating angles, wind gusts, and velocity adjustments in real time. He flared the aircraft gently at the correct altitude, feeling the nose lift as the wheels approached the tarmac. The massive plane touched down, once, twice, before stabilizing. Reverse thrust engaged, brakes slowed the aircraft, and finally, Flight AQR 781 came to a full, safe stop. Inside, the cabin erupted with cries of relief, sobs of gratitude, and cheers. Mothers clutched children tightly, strangers hugged, and even elderly passengers wept quietly. Aeon leaned back in the captain's seat, trembling but aware of the lives he had saved. 408 souls had survived due to the courage and skill of a 14-year-old boy. Paramedics rushed to the pilots, who were stabilized and transported to the hospital. Doctors later confirmed that without Aeon's intervention, the plane would have crashed, resulting in catastrophic loss of life. Airlines and aviation authorities lauded his bravery, and news outlets across the globe broadcasted the miraculous story. A teenager had landed a commercial aircraft safely, saving hundreds of lives. In the days following, Aeon's life changed. The world celebrated him as a hero. Interviews, awards, and honors followed. Yet he remained humble, always crediting his training, focus, and calmness under pressure. "I only did what had to be done," he would say. Fear is a luxury you cannot afford when lives depend on you. Aeon's story became a case study in aviation schools worldwide, demonstrating that courage, quick thinking, and determination could surpass age and experience. Pilots, trainees, and even seasoned experts marveled at the poise and calm of someone so young facing unimaginable stakes. Over time, Aeon pursued his lifelong dream, becoming a professional pilot. Yet he never forgot that day, when the sky held its breath and entrusted a child with a responsibility far beyond his years. He became a symbol of hope, inspiration, and the extraordinary power of courage. The world would forever remember the day a boy, just 14 years old, landed a massive commercial aircraft and saved 408 lives. The sun had climbed higher over the desert as Flight AQR 781 soared above the clouds, carrying 408 passengers whose lives now depended entirely on a 14-year-old boy, Ayan Malik. The world outside was tranquil, painted in soft golds and blues, completely unaware of the extraordinary drama unfolding hundreds of feet above the earth. Inside the cockpit, a symphony of alarms, blinking lights, and the constant hum of engines filled the space, while Ayan's small hands gripped the yoke with a mix of determination and fear. Every second demanded absolute precision. Ayan's mind raced through countless simulator scenarios, calculations, and procedures he had memorized over years of obsession with aviation. He checked instruments obsessively: altitude, speed, wind conditions, fuel levels, engine performance. Each indicator required rapid assessment, and any mistake could cost hundreds of lives. The autopilot assisted, but minor corrections, especially during turbulence, required his direct attention. Below him, passengers were unaware of the true scale of their peril. Some slept fitfully, unaware that without this boy's extraordinary composure, the aircraft would have already crashed. Mothers hugged children tighter, whispering prayers under their breath. Flight attendants, trained for emergencies, watched the young pilot with tense hope, guiding passengers as best they could while silently acknowledging that the boy's hands now held the power of life and death. Ayan's focus never wavered. Turbulence rocked the aircraft violently as they approached a weather front. Lightning flashed in distant clouds, illuminating his concentrated face. Sweat dripped down his forehead, but he did not falter. Every adjustment had to be small, precise. Overcorrecting could have catastrophic consequences. Maintain heading and altitude, ground control instructed. You're doing remarkably well, Ayan. Prepare for the descent phase. Karachi Airport is ready for your approach. Follow instructions exactly. The words were both comforting and pressuring. Descending a large passenger jet was challenging even for experienced pilots. For a 14-year-old boy, it was nearly unimaginable. But fear had no place in his mind. Calm, calculation, and instinct guided him. He studied the radar and weather patterns. Karachi Airport, hundreds of miles away, was the only safe landing site. Gusts of wind buffeted the aircraft as they neared the city. The plane swayed slightly, but Ayan countered with meticulous adjustments of throttle, rudder, and flaps. Each movement was critical. Each micro-decision mattered. Meanwhile, in the cabin, tension mounted. Whispers of prayers, anxious glances, and tight grips on armrests filled the space. Children clutched parents, strangers held hands. The entire aircraft seemed united in hope and silent trust in the boy at the controls. Ground control continued. Lower landing gear. Stage 1 flaps. Align with the runway centerline. Monitor speed carefully. We are with you, step by step. Ayan complied flawlessly. The landing gear extended with a metallic click, and the plane's weight shifted subtly. Flaps fully deployed, adjusting the aerodynamics. He monitored speed and wind, correcting minor deviations with micro-adjustments. Turbulence still threatened, but the aircraft remained stable under his command. As they approached the runway, the sun reflected off the tarmac below, casting a narrow golden path through the clouds. Emergency crews, alerted hours before, had mobilized in precise formation. Fire trucks, ambulances, and personnel lined the runway, lights flashing and ready for the miraculous arrival. Prepare for final approach, ground control instructed. Reduce throttle, begin flare at 20 feet, keep wings level. And maintain heading. You are doing brilliantly. Ayan's palms were sweaty, but his movements were exact. He reduced throttle, eased the nose upward slightly, and began the flare. The plane touched down, once, then bounced lightly, before the main wheels settled firmly on the tarmac. Reverse thrust engaged, brakes applied. Slowly, agonizingly, the aircraft came to a full stop. Inside, the cabin erupted with emotion. Cries of relief, laughter, prayers, and sobs mingled together. Mothers embraced children tightly. Strangers hugged each other. Elderly passengers whispered thanks to God. Flight attendants wept quietly, realizing the magnitude of what had just occurred. Ayan leaned back, exhausted yet composed, overwhelmed by the enormity of his achievement. 408 lives had been saved. Paramedics immediately attended to the unconscious pilots, stabilizing them before transporting them to the hospital. Doctors later confirmed that without Ayan's skill and composure, the outcome would have been catastrophic. Airlines, aviation authorities, and media outlets hailed him as a hero. News of the miraculous landing spread globally, A 14-year-old had successfully landed a commercial aircraft, saving hundreds of lives. Yet even amidst the global accolades, Aon remained humble. "I just did what had to be done," he said. When lives are at stake, fear is not an option. You act, and hope for the best. The story inspired countless people worldwide. Aviation schools used it as a case study. Pilots, instructors, and trainees marveled at the poise of someone so young facing such overwhelming responsibility. His courage, determination, and quick thinking were held as an example of extraordinary human capability. Over the following years, Aon pursued his dream of becoming a professional pilot. He never forgot that day, the day the sky held its breath, entrusting a child with the lives of hundreds. That day became a symbol of courage, hope, and the extraordinary potential within humanity. Families of the passengers sent letters of gratitude. Airlines honored him with awards. Governments recognized him for his bravery. Yet for Aon, the true reward was knowing he had acted when it mattered most, when the impossible became possible because fear did not dominate, and courage took the helm. The world would forever remember the day a 14-year-old boy took control of a commercial aircraft, faced the unthinkable, and landed it safely, saving 408 lives. The story continued to inspire millions, teaching lessons of composure, precision, bravery, and hope. Even as he grew older and achieved personal success, Aon always remembered the plane, the passengers, and the fleeting moment when an ordinary boy became a hero against all odds. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and crimson as Flight AQR 781 finally came to a halt on the tarmac at Karachi International Airport. Inside the cabin, the air was thick with disbelief, relief, and gratitude. The passengers, numbering 408, had just survived the unimaginable. And at the center of it all was a 14-year-old boy, Aon Malik, whose courage, composure, and extraordinary skill had made the impossible possible. From the moment he had stepped into the cockpit, Aon had transformed from an ordinary teenager into a figure of calm authority. Alarms had screamed incessantly, warning lights had flashed furiously, and the plane had groaned under the strain of mechanical anomalies and turbulence. Yet through it all, his mind worked with the precision of a seasoned pilot, analyzing every gauge, reading every indicator, and making decisions that affected hundreds of lives in real time. The cabin crew, who had guided passengers and attempted to stabilize the chaos, now looked upon him with awe. He did it," one attendant whispered, tears streaming down her face. "A child, he saved all of us." Aon sat in the captain's chair, his small hands still gripping the yoke. Sweat coated his brow, and his clothes clung uncomfortably, but the most overwhelming sensation was the gravity of what had just transpired. 408 people, each with families, hopes, and dreams, had survived because of him. Paramedics quickly moved to the cockpit to assess the pilots, both of whom were now stabilized. Doctors would later confirm that without Aon's intervention, the situation would have ended in tragedy. The aircraft, a massive twin-engine commercial jet, had been brought safely from a perilous altitude to a precise landing despite engine fluctuations, turbulence, and a complete lack of active pilot guidance. News spread rapidly. Airports, airlines, governments, and media outlets hailed the boy as a hero. His story, unbelievable yet true, captivated the globe, a 14-year-old landing a commercial aircraft with 408 passengers aboard. Yet amidst accolades and attention, Aon remained remarkably grounded. "I just did what I had to do," he would say later, in interviews that reached millions. "I focused on the plane, on the instruments, and on keeping everyone safe. Fear is a luxury you can't afford when so many lives are at stake." Back in the cabin, the atmosphere was a mixture of jubilation and lingering shock. Families embraced, crying and whispering thanks to God. Strangers shared tears and hugs, united by the extraordinary experience they had survived together. Children, who had cried in fear earlier, now clung to their parents, eyes wide with wonder at the reality of what had just happened. Emergency crews who had lined the runway observed from a distance, witnessing the miraculous landing with a mixture of relief and astonishment. Firefighters, paramedics, and ground staff had prepared for disaster, and yet it had never come. Instead, they saw a teenager orchestrate survival with a clarity and bravery that defied imagination. The media frenzy began almost immediately. Live footage of the landing, interviews with shaken but grateful passengers, and statements from airline officials painted the scene. The boy who had taken control in a moment of unparalleled crisis, maintaining calm where panic would have been understandable, had brought the plane safely to the ground. Headlines around the world celebrated him as the boy pilot miracle, teenage hero of the skies, and 14-year-old saves 408 lives. Yet fame and recognition did not define Aeon. For him, the landing was not about glory, it was about action. It was about focusing every ounce of knowledge, instinct, and courage to save lives. Years later, aviation experts would analyze the landing, praising his flawless execution, composure under pressure, and ability to perform critical maneuvers flawlessly despite his age and inexperience with actual flight conditions. Aeon's life changed profoundly after that day. Invitations to speak at aviation events, awards ceremonies, and interviews flooded in. Governments and airline authorities honored him for his bravery. Schools and institutions shared his story as an example of courage, intelligence, and human potential. Yet he remained humble. "I just did what anyone would do in my place," he would often say. His personal journey into aviation continued. The experience strengthened his resolve to become a professional pilot. Hours spent on simulators, in classrooms, and in training now had deeper meaning. He understood firsthand what responsibility meant, and how the decisions of a single individual could ripple across hundreds of lives. Despite the acclaim, Aeon never lost sight of the human element of that day. He remembered every passenger's face, the expressions of fear, hope, and eventual relief. He remembered the grip of a mother's hand on her child, the silent prayers of elderly passengers, and the gratitude etched on every face when the plane came to a safe stop. These images stayed with him, grounding him in the significance of the event far beyond the fame or awards. Over the years, he became a symbol of courage and hope. Aviation schools incorporated his story into curriculum to teach not only the technical aspects of flight but also the human aspects of crisis management, decision-making, and composure under pressure. Pilots, trainees, and even seasoned experts studied his actions to understand how extraordinary calm and precision could overcome even the most dire circumstances. The story also resonated with families worldwide. Letters poured in from passengers, relatives, and strangers expressing gratitude, awe, and inspiration. Each note reinforced the simple truth: an ordinary teenager had accomplished something extraordinary. As Aeon grew, he continued to honor that day not as a moment of personal glory but as a testament to courage, preparation, and calm under pressure. He understood that heroism is not about age or size but about willingness to act, clarity of thought, and the courage to confront fear. Eventually, he became a licensed commercial pilot, achieving the dreams that had once seemed distant. Yet he never forgot that first flight, the day the sky entrusted him with hundreds of lives. The experience remained vivid, a constant reminder that courage, skill, and determination can defy even the most impossible odds. Years later, in interviews and speeches, he would reflect, "I was just a boy, but on that day, fear didn't matter. Knowledge, focus, and the will to act mattered. That is what saved 408 lives." The world remembered Aeon Malik not only as a hero but as a symbol of hope, bravery, and the extraordinary potential of the human spirit. His story transcended aviation. It became a lesson in resilience, courage, and the power of determination. The day Flight AQR 781 landed safely, the skies witnessed an unparalleled miracle. A teenager had faced the unimaginable and succeeded. 408 people had lived, and countless others were inspired. The event would be remembered forever, not only as a remarkable feat of aviation but as a testament to the human capacity for courage in the face of the impossible. Aeon Malik, 14 years old, had proven that age is no barrier to heroism, and that even in the darkest, highest-stakes moments, courage, knowledge, and focus can save lives.